What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Funnel Vision Show. I am very excited because today we get to talk about operations, which as agency owners, this is one of the biggest challenges that we face. We're always the bottlenecks in our own agency. So how do we get out of it? How do we create systems and playbooks and really put ourselves in a position where we have the right people who can run operations and help us really turn our business into a machine. And we have Jhana Li, who is the owner of Spyglass Ops, and she's an operations wizard. She basically lives and breathes operations. Jhana, I'm super excited that you're here.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here as well.
We're going to have a fun conversation. As I always do with every single guest, I always start with, I want you to give me your humble brag, or not so humble brag if you prefer it that way. So in other words, what have you done for clients? What have you done for your own business? Why should people listen?
Yeah. I think probably what I am most proud of in my own business is the same thing that I help my clients do, which is scale their company to the growth goals that they've set for themselves while working themselves out of the day-to-day weeds and achieving some level of work-life balance and personal freedom within their business. So my humble brag is that I got to go whitewater raft the Grand Canyon for 3 weeks and be completely offline and have my team build and launch an entirely new marketing and sales funnel while I was gone. And my company thrived while I was gone, right? That was my humble brag. But being able to achieve that for clients is why I do what I do, right? Being able to help people fire themselves from the day to day, help people take the trip that they always wanted to take, or the vacation test that they always wanted to try, or just spend more time with their families every week as they continue to run their business. I like to think that I help people fall back in love with the process of scaling their business and not make it quite so hard.
Oh man, that's a really deep topic. I mean, people have such a hard time getting out of the day to day of their own business, and they think that their business is them at the end of the day. A lot of times, and really, a business is designed to work for you, not for you to work for it. And it's great that that's what you help people with. So tell me a bit about that journey. Like let's take it a little step back here. How did you get into this? How did you start this process? And walk me through the journey.
Yeah. So I first got into operations while I was actually living full time in a van, traveling through North and South America, having no idea where we were going. We were just traveling around. And my boyfriend at the time that I was traveling with was starting and scaling a digital marketing agency. And so I was working with him, as a partner. Just you talk about things, you try and fix problems together, you talk through questions together. And that is how I got my first exposure to entrepreneurship and kind of agency space and just the digital world as a whole. And through a series of odd events, I stepped in to fill in for somebody in his team that had left. And I ultimately ended up becoming that company COO because when I got inside of the business, it became really obvious and clear to me how much was broken, where there were opportunities to tighten things and clean things up and fix systems. And keep in mind, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I didn't even know what operations was at the time. I just saw their billing system. I was like, wow, that looks pretty messy. I should go clean that up. And then I found $50K per month that was just leaking out of their business in erroneous billing, right? So these were the sorts of things that I was learning. And I eventually learned that there's a word for that. It's operations. It's that lens that allows you to see where there are gaps and inefficiencies and waste within a business, and then tighten it and clean it up and save the company a ton of money and a ton of profit. And so that's kind of where I got my start. I eventually became COO for a coaching program that had 500 plus marketing agencies in it. I was their head operations coach for a number of years. And so I got 500 agency owners coming to me, pulling back the curtain on their company and saying, this is my shit. This is what's going on. This is what's not working. And that was really where I got just enough data to understand what is operations? What does it take to actually scale a company? What does it take to scale a business owner out of the day-to-day weeds of their business? And how can I put a methodology and a system around this to help every founder do that every time?
So walk me through what you discovered over the course of the over working with these 500 businesses, what is that methodology? What is looking at the business through an operations lens? What does that mean exactly? Where do most founders get it wrong when it comes to that?
Yeah. So this is the catch 22 that I learned, which is that most founders get it wrong because they try to adopt that lens within their own business. They try to become and be the operator. They try and hold on to that hat way too long. And the reality is that the visionary lens and the operator lens are like yin and yang. They're incredible complements, but they're also opposites of each other. And so what your company needs, this is what I learned. What your company needs is for you to be the visionary. It needs you to have the vision. It needs you to be focused on moving the company forward and driving it into its next chapter and stage of growth. What it doesn't need is for you to audit the billing system. What it doesn't need is for you to learn how to build a beautiful SOP. It actually doesn't need that because that's not your highest value and it's not your underlying and fundamental lens. But someone's got to do that work, right? Like the 50K is leaking out of the business no matter what. Someone's got to catch it. Someone's got to keep that money in the ecosystem. And so the pattern for success, the methodology is not a how, it's actually a who. It's the second in command operator who brings that underlying lens to the table to complement your visionary lens. And the combination of these two creates magic and highest profitability and highest growth for the business.
So what do you call yourself? I mean, you came in as a operator who now you're a founder. Does it work only one way? Like, can you be an operator and then switch to be a visionary? And is that a unicorn? Is that like is that what I should call you? Or how does it work if you are more operational minded? Like, let's say, because a lot of agency owners, they start their agency because they know how to do something, right? They know how to set up Facebook ads and scale them. They know how to whatever. And then they think, oh, well, let me go and start an agency and get a whole bunch of clients, etc. So what have you noticed when it comes to agencies? Are they more operational and lack some of the vision side, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, I would say 90% of the CEOs I know definitely naturally tend towards the visionary side. I naturally tended towards the operations side. But what I love about entrepreneurs in general is like we understand that identity is just what we decide it to be, and we believe ourselves to be capable of learning anything we want. So is it this like firm structure that you are who you are and you can't cross to the other side of the bridge? No, not at all. I'm in the process of crossing the bridge. It's difficult. It's uncomfortable, but I'm doing it. But it's not about whether it's possible. It's about whether it is of highest value to your company, right? What serves your company the most? What serves your company the most is to live in your zone of genius and bring your highest possible value to the business. Whether that's being the CEO or being the operator, understand how you can be of highest value contribution and then hire out whichever side of the field is not within your wheelhouse. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, and it's going to be as efficient as possible.
Interesting. So tell me, you went and you started off in a van and working on this as an operator in this agency, and then you became kind of a coach into a program that teaches agencies. So what was the tipping point? What was that aha moment for you where you're like, man, I need to do this. I need to build out this system. I need to help out these businesses. Walk me through, like, what was that moment where that happened for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if it was like a lightning bolt moment, but there were a couple of major milestones for sure, which is, I had just left my last COO position. I had all these skills and all this knowledge, and I didn't really know, to be completely honest with you, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And so to kind of buy myself time, I took on a client, just like a freelance operations consulting client. And then I took on 2 clients. And then before I knew it, I had like 5 clients, and my calendar was entirely full. I was taking client calls all day, every day for a full week. I'd maxed out how much I could charge, how much I could earn, and how many people I could serve. And when I hit that limit, that I think was the tipping point for me, because I realized that if I couldn't figure out how to scale out my own methodology, I would only ever be able to help 5 people at a time. And that wasn't sufficient for me. Like I've always wanted to have a bigger, more scalable impact in the world. And so I decided to start and scale a business, not like for the money or the glory or the fame or anything. It's just because I wanted to be able to reach more people and I wanted to create a business that could do that. So the very first product I launched was my coaching program, which we still run, COO Academy. And that was where I could take the second in commands from these CEOs. I could put them through my program and I could train them to become quote unquote like mini me's, little operators that could go back into those companies and start implementing all of that change within the business. And it's just kind of grown and expanded from there. But that is still at the core of what we do is operations recruitment and then operations coaching to help CEO founders identify the who, plug that person in and give that person everything they need to transform the CEO's life.
Interesting. So I'd like to better understand. I'm going to act as a CEO, which I am, who's very visionary, which I am, where now you come in and say, what does that framework look like? You know, somebody who's not an operator has a hard time thinking, like they think, well, I just need a whole bunch of SOPs and I need I need a Notion board that has everything in it. And that's the playbook and I can step away. Right. So, what is that training that you take these operators through? What does that framework look like? Like, what are the pillars that you kind of, preach and teach?
Such a good question. So I look at the operations of a business through actually 6 core pillars. So we can walk them through really, really quick. These pillars are strategy, right? Do we know where the business is going and how we're going to get there? Leadership, that's you, the CEO, and any leadership or management team you have in place. Team, that's the performance of your team. And is your team bringing their highest performance to the table every day? It's communication, like meetings, information flow within the business, systems. So what you just talked about is literally only one of 6 pillars, right? SOPs, Notion boards, these things are important, but they're literally 1/6 of the operational job that actually exists within the business. And then the last one is data and KPIs. So these are the 6 core pillars that I walk CEOs through, that I break down their business. Like we do a company-wide audit when we start working with a client, and we break their company down into these 6 core pillars and then give them a health score within each pillar so that they understand which are they crushing it in and which are actively bottlenecking them. Because these 6 pillars essentially serve, I think of like the foundations of a house, right? You can build the tallest freaking skyscraper building in the world, but the foundation has to run equally deep for that to be a solid structure. Otherwise, you've got this really, really tall tower and one gust of wind is going to blow the whole thing over. And we see that with businesses, right? Like you can like sell like crazy and scale your agency up to 100K per month, but without any scalable or stable foundation, you have one bad month and you're back down to 20K, right? It's not stable. And so these 6 core pillars are the foundation that sink into the ground and keep your company stable. Losing or missing any one of them creates instability and makes it harder to scale sustainably.
Yeah, I'll share a story on this because I think it's extremely important and highlights this. So this is back in end of 2016, I guess. My daughter was just born, and our agency had 3 months in a row of 150K months, and we'd collected like $450,000. In January, we decided, okay, hey, let's go on a trip. Me, my wife, and my daughter, who's like 5 months old at the time. And finally, I get to celebrate after 18 months of hard grind. Finally, we figured out the acquisition model to get customers consistently. And we were in San Diego, California for 10 days. We stayed at a very nice hotel and all that stuff. And the entire 10 days, my wife and 5-month-old daughter walked up and down the beach by themselves because I was stuck in a dark hotel room, day in, day out, on calls, talking to clients who are kind of pissed off, talking to my team who is like running around like chickens with their heads cut off. It was the worst experience because my wife at the end, like, I was so stressed that like even when we were eating dinner, like she could feel that stress coming through me. And at the end, my wife said, Mikkel, I love you and I'm happy that like you were able to kind of get this to this stage from a revenue standpoint, but I wish we never went on this trip. And I was like the, bam, a gut punch of like, man, you work so hard, you do all these things only to realize that like that top level number is it's very superficial if the underlying aspect of like, well, why are you doing this in the first place? Isn't there. And I think that was my biggest first lesson when it came to operations. So tell me from your perspective, what makes a good operator?
Yeah. Dude, I just want to like reflect back to you on that story for a second, because I think it's really, first off, thank you for sharing it. And I think it's really powerful because like at the end of the day, why do we do this crazy thing called entrepreneurship? We do it to take care of our loved ones. We do it to achieve personal freedom and freedom of choice over ourselves and our time. And what I see all the time, what is so heartbreaking to me and why I do this work is for exactly the reason you just said, which is like, we have these reasons over here, and then we build a business that literally takes us further away from those things than we've ever been before. It's the exact opposite of why we did this fucking thing. And the key takeaway I just want the audience to understand is it doesn't have to be that way, right? We tell ourselves that it does. We tell ourselves that our business needs us to work 80-hour weeks. It needs us to hustle. It needs us to like, this is what we should be doing. But the reality is that it absolutely does not. We just need to learn how to run our business a different way. So to your question around like, what does an operator do? An operator helps you run your business a different way. They are not just a buffer, right? They don't just protect you and your time from the team and from the day to day. They do that. But how they do it is by building, I like to think of it as like, instead of being a firefighter, they build a fireproof house. They are a fire preventer. So most entrepreneurs that I know, when they're thinking about hiring in a second command, they're like, I have to deal with all this shit and my clients, my team coming to me all day, every day. So I'm just going to hire in somebody underneath me, and then that person can deal with all the shit, right? But that only gets you a fraction of the real value because the shit is still happening and someone still has to deal with it. Versus if you bring in the right operator and you give them the right training, that person understands how to mitigate and reduce the fires that happen, period. They just go away. They just get eliminated. The stupid team questions that you have to answer again and again, they just disappear. They no longer have to happen. And that's a fireproof house. That is the most stable and efficient structure for your business, because whether your team is wasting your time or your COO's time, they're still wasting someone's time, and it's waste and it's not effective and it's not a good way to run the business. And so the right operator brings the lens and the tools and the systems to the table to just eliminate that day-to-day chaos so that all of that time and energy that gets freed up can be put into growth, can be put towards the needle moving activities. Because let's be honest, let's say that you spend 5 hours a week solving client fires. That's 5 hours of sales calls that you could have been taking. That's 5 hours of marketing campaigns that you could have been optimizing. That's 5 hours of growth that you could have created that you didn't because you were dealing with these client fires. That is very real opportunity cost to your business. That is very real money that has not been generated that could have been. And so that's the real ROI of operations. It's like, it's not just that your life gets better. You're able to grow your business so much faster because you only have to focus on growth, and your time is not being wasted by all these things that actually are not driving that much value to the business.
So just going back to that original question then, what, if I'm looking for the right operator, what am I looking for? Like what, like I understand it theoretically, they have to be a firehouse proof builder, like they have to they have to know how to build houses. But actually though, what am I looking for when it comes to the skill set, the mindset, like, because like you said, most of us think, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to put somebody in place who's under me, who now it creates a barrier between me and my team. But that's not the case. So what am I looking for? What are those traits?
Yeah. So I look for exactly two need to haves. Like if you don't have one of these two things, they will never be a great operator. If you have both of those things, they have the potential to be. The first one is what I call level 3 thinking. Level 3 thinking is that lens that we've been talking about, right? So the lens essentially is, does this operator look at your business and see it through the lens of systems and inefficiencies? And there's a series of questions that you can ask on a skill assessment in interviews, right? Like this is something that we do is we hire operators and we are stress testing for this specific lens, which is it's like when I give you a pile of shit, do you get excited? And do you know how to clean it up? Because that's just how your brain works, right? You're organizing, you're systemizing, and you're seeing where things could be better and you're plugging holes because you can't not see it that way. That's just who you are. That's what I believe makes for a great operator. Everything that we call operations, the systems and the SOPs and the meetings and all that stuff, that can be taught. Those are just skills that you layer on top of the lens to make for a great operator. I can teach someone the skills. That's what we do in our coaching programs, but I can't teach someone the lens. And so if somebody has it, then they've got the potential, which brings me to the second need to have, which is they have to be driven and growth oriented to learn operations. I can't make somebody want to get better and learn how to build a system. I can't force them to want that. But if they've got the underlying lens and they've got the drive to learn and to grow in that direction, that's somebody I can turn into a great operator one day. If you're missing either of those things, though, it's never going to happen.
That's super powerful. And I think that's where most people they fail because they basically skip those steps, right? They basically say, I don't even know what the underlying thing should be. It's just like, do you like systems? Have you built systems before, et cetera, right? Have you built SOPs? And then it's like, yeah, of course I've built an SOP. I mean, who hasn't?
Right, exactly. This person is detail oriented, pretty organized, and they're competent and they can get shit done. That must be operations, right? No, dude, that's just a competent human being. Like, there's nothing to say that that person's going to be exceptional at operations versus, what we most often see, people will try and pull them out of like client success roles. Sometimes they'll pull them out of sales roles. But what you end up getting is, let's say you had like a bomb client success manager. They were absolutely crushing it. They handled all your client escalations and you're like, perfect. This is my second in command. I should put them in the operations role. Well, now all you've done is you've swapped out a really good client success manager for a mediocre operator, right? You've just paid more to get less versus is that person going to become a better operator? We train client success managers into operations all the time, but because they're a better operator than they were at client success. That's the only time I would make that trade.
Totally. So let's wrap up here with like, tell me in your mind, after doing everything I could guess, but I'm not going to, what is your best growth tactic? Like knowing everything, what do you like, what is your best growth tactic?
Okay. Interesting question. I think my best growth tactic, if we're talking and going back to like, again, what's the goal here? The goal is to grow our business, but to do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice our time and our personal freedom. The best growth tactic I can offer a founder is to learn leadership, high performance leadership. I gave an entire talk on this and you can find it on my YouTube if you want it at the beginning of the year at the Agency Founders event. And I was talking to entrepreneurs that entire weekend about what their freedom goals were and the trips they wanted to take and their families and the time they wanted to spend. And the biggest word that I heard was someday. Someday I will get there. I have to hustle now so that someday I can get there. And so I got up on that stage and I pretty much spent the whole 45 minutes calling bullshit on someday. Mm-hmm. Because if you are doing things that are trapping you in your business today, they will only continue to grow and stack and compound and pile on someday as you continue to grow. You will never be further away from your freedom than someday when you're so burnt out and you're so tired that you will do anything to get out of that spot. That is when you are furthest from your freedom. And so if there's one thing that you can do to not just not be there someday, but to actually move someday forward and turn freedom into something you can achieve in your business today, it's not SOPs, it's not systems, it's leadership. Because if you can build a high performance team, your team will build their SOPs. If you can manage a high performance operator, your operator will build the systems. They'll build the team. They'll build the SOPs. They'll build the data and the meetings. They will run the day to day of your business so long as you know how to put the right people in the right roles and set them up for success. So if there's one highest leverage skill that I can recommend, it's leadership.
That's awesome. That's a great way to end this show. It's very powerful, and I agree with you that it's very easy for whatever you put in your head is what is reality. And the reality is, if you're putting the word someday in your head, that is reality. But that also means that tomorrow is also someday, and someday is actually someday. So there's just a never ending. It never ends, right? So. I appreciate your time. I appreciate this conversation. It's given me a lot to think about as well for my own operations, for my business. So with that said, where can people learn more about you? Where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so probably the best place to reach out to me directly is on Instagram, the Jhana Li. I'll make sure it's in the show notes. But shoot me a DM. Let me know what resonated. Let me know what questions or struggles you're having with this. And yeah, let me know if there's a way I can help you achieve more growth and freedom in your business.
Awesome. And your company, if they want to find an operator, is spyglassops.com.
That's right. Spyglassops.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jhana. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.